So welcome to Scrapbook Live. I am Megan Jacks. Today is July 9th, and for today's layout, I'm going to be working with the borders that I did a couple weeks ago. Has it been a couple weeks? Yeah, it's been a couple weeks now, and show you how to use them as part of a layout. So this layout that we're going to be doing is originally from the Creative Memories blog. It uses the carving memories. I think that was a theme kit, and from like 2020. Yeah, 2020. And so what I liked about this layout I love Halloween. So anything that's a Halloween design, it always catches my eye. Whether I'm going to make it with Halloween papers or not, I'm still very attracted to those layouts. I was like, oh, what are we doing here? This layout was kind of the same. It's pretty straightforward if you're creating it as the blog sets it up. You just use some like triangles of paper. But as I was looking at it, I was like, you know what? I think there's some bolder areas where they got kind of that orange background paper in there with the spiders on it. I was like, I bet we could use the borders that we created a couple weeks ago, or that you could use any border, but I'm going to be using the whale tail border that I made from a couple weeks ago using the Pacific Northwest collection. And so I'll show you guys how to do that. And we'll talk a little bit about strategies for it, because this technique is very dependent on what size your border is. There is a handout. So if you guys, I just see Judy's comment. She's attracted to food layouts. I get that too. I am as well. But the handout has directions when you want to kind of give that universal formula that will work for any of the borders. It's pretty straightforward. There is a little bit of math, but I'll walk you through it. And I do have a chart on there to kind of help you out depending on the size of your border. So I'm gonna switch my overhead camera and we will get going. All right, so here we go. I have the two handouts. They are both on my blog. They are two separate downloads. I did not combine them. They're two separate downloads. So you will want to get those on there. And just a quick note, if you guys have been using your mobile device to get the downloads, I'm starting to add buttons that hopefully will make it a little more straightforward on where you have to click to get the handouts. If you're on a computer, you're probably seeing the actual PDF preview, which makes it really convenient to see where to download. But we have two handouts. We have our layout handout, which is here. And like I said, it's using the carving memories. How cute is that? But notice those chunkier sections of orange. That's where we're going to be sliding in our borders, and we're going to be able to do it from one 12-inch border. So if you love making borders, but you're not sure how to always use them in your layouts, or you're looking for fresh ways to use them, this is going to be a solution for you. Now, this is a two-page layout. A one-page layout. And I would probably, on this type of a page, just create a second companion page that maybe just pulls in the colors and the elements from this page over to the companion page. Let this page be kind of your statement page. And then over here, you can just add in kind of just a little more, not maybe as decorative, of your additional images. You could, of course, duplicate it if you wanted to. So there's really no right or wrong way to expand a single page to a two-page layout, but just an idea there. So I have a 12-inch border, and it's one of my whale tail borders. So I've got that. My border is 3 inches. In this particular design, a little bit of a chunkier border is going to work well. So if this is a good one to use if you've got a chunky border. Now, as we're walking through this, I want you to set your border aside, and I want you to get some scratch paper. All right, we're going to walk through chopping up our border with scratch paper first, spare paper. Just use a cover sheet from your layout. Or from the paper pack. I'm going to be using some cardstock here just because I want to make it very clear and I can draw on it and show you where I'm cutting. But you just make sure you're using scratch paper first. All right. We have our handout that shows us how we're going to be making these cuts. I thought everything would be nice and straightforward when we cut this, and we basically just cut our border in half, chop off our 45-degree angles on each piece, and then I got messing with it, and it really just makes not a lot of border left. So we're going to be strategically cutting our 12-inch border, and so that we can maximize the amount of space and reduce the waste that we have. Because we've gone to all these efforts to put together these pretty borders, we don't want to leave a lot of it on the as scrap. We want to use it all as we can. So I'm going to show you, and this is all very dependent on what size your border is. At the bottom, you will see here, I've got a little bit of a chart, and I've got a formula. This formula talks about your border height. Your border height, I am referring to when your border is sitting horizontal in front of you. Your border height is top to bottom. We know our width is always 12 inches. Our height can be variable. Sometimes you'll have a 2-inch border, maybe even just a 1-inch border, up to 3, even 3.5 or 4. This technique, for simplicity, I have given you some very basic measurements down here at the bottom, going from a 1-inch, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. You may have borders that are all sizes, going up from 1.25 inch, 2.25 inch. So you've got a formula here, and whatever your height is, divide that number in 2. So if I've got a 3-inch border here, my X number is 1.5. If I've got a 4-inch border, my X number, I'm dividing that number in 2, my X number is 2. If I've got a 1.5-inch border, I have a mistake on here. The 1.5 at the bottom, that should actually say 3/4 inch. So if you've already printed, down here at the bottom, it should be 3/4 inch. All right. So if you've already printed it, just mark it out and write in the correction. I will correct it and get it re-uploaded to the blog. So when I talk about the border height, you are taking your border height, you're dividing it in half, and that's giving you your X number. Now what we're going to do with that number, and I'll demonstrate it for you, but I want to explain it. We are going to find the center of our border, which we always know is at 6 inches. We have a 12-inch wide border. We're going to find middle, which is at 6 inches, and we're going to measure that X distance on either side of our middle. The 0 center ruler is going to make this really easy. You can also use your cutting mat, and you can use a regular ruler. I will be showing you with the 0 center ruler, but I'll talk about it from the standpoint of also using your regular ruler. So I am going to start with I'm going to demo it on the canary cardstock. Again, work with scrap paper first. Do not cut your border when you're first learning a technique. Always use scrap paper when you're learning a technique. So I'm going to cut my paper. I'm going to go ahead and cut this one. I'm going to cut it to 3 inches because that's the width of my border here. This border is 3 inches. So I'll go ahead and cut this to 3 inches wide. So here is my border, 3 inches, it's 3 inches tall by 12 inches wide. Now I'm gonna grab my 0 center ruler, which I had to open a new one. I couldn't find my original one. I'm gonna use my 0 center ruler. And if I've lined it up on my cutting mat, I can find middle really easy. 6 inches is my middle. I'll make sure that my 0 center ruler is lined up at 6 inches. I'm gonna use a pencil. You are working with the front side of your border. Your border is facing up. If you have a design on it, your border is facing up. This is the front. Measuring, here's my 0. And remember, I have a 3-inch border. So for a 3-inch border, my X equals 1 1/2 inch. All right, so my X is 1 1/2 inch in this case. So I've got my middle. Here's my middle. I'm going to measure on the bottom of my border. I'm measuring 1 1/2 inches to the left, and I'm going to make a pencil mark. I'll actually make it dark with my journal pen here so you guys can see it. 1 1/2 inches to the left on the bottom. Now I'm going to come over that same distance, but on the top edge this time, going to the right. 1 1/2 inches going to the right. So you can imagine, as you see on the picture I gave you, imagine there's your, middle. I'll just draw it with some dashed lines or dotted lines down the middle. So there's my middle, there's my 6 inch. You don't actually have to mark your 6 inch. I'm just showing you where it is. On the bottom, I've come over 1.5 inches, which is my X number, and on the top I've come over 1.5 inches with my X number. Using a pencil, you want to be able to erase this. Now what I need to do is I need to cut this on a 45-degree angle. I should be able to just line it up and go from mark to mark, but you can use your the 45-degree angle on your trimmer. Line up your pieces or your two marks, and what you should see is they should be right on the cutting line. And then that way you can just go ahead and slice. You can use your sight guides of your trimmer and just follow it along. Everything looks good. If it does not, if there is something that is wonky about it, put it back on your cutting mat, go ahead and double check your measurements. What you'll do is you'll cut it. Now, when you're actually cutting your border, you've got multiple layers there. You're gonna have to make sure you have a good firm pressure. I would probably go up and down a couple of times and then holding this piece over here firm while you pull away the other piece. That way, if you have to come back and cut again because you didn't get through all your layers, this piece over here has stayed nice and firm and you haven't lost where your cut line is. So now we have cut this paper essentially in half, and this is the front of our border. This is the two fronts. So it kind of sits like this. So this is a front and this is a front. It's actually a good way to be able to cut a paper in half on the diagonal. That technique will get you 2 even sections. So if you have a border that you wanted to layer on a paper like this, you could. It gives you a nice even cut for those 2 segments. But we now need to go ahead and turn this to be able to go to the corner. So we're going to be chopping off the corners to give us that we're going to chop off this squared end so that we can have a full corner border. So to do that, I'm actually going to flip this over to the reverse side. I do not want to cut it from here. If I cut it from here, I'm actually going to end up with my angles going the same way, which is going to give me the wrong direction. But I want to use my 45-degree angle. So I'll flip my paper over. I'm now working on the reverse. This is the reverse. I'm working on the reverse. So this should be the back side of your border. Line it up on the 45-degree line, putting the corner up there at the top on your cutting line. And then you'll slice. So there we go. We have one piece cut. I'll do the same thing. I'm going to flip it over to the reverse. I've got to rotate it around. So I'm going to cut off that squared end. And my angles should be coming towards each other. That's the big thing to note. I'm coming down here and I'm coming over here. You will have a couple triangles that are scrap. You can set those aside. Depending on how your border is, you might be able to have little corner pieces you can use. Otherwise, they'll end up in the garbage. But now you should have 2 corner pieces. These are both the front. And what they'll do when we set these on here, because imagine this is a heart. Okay, I've got a directional print, or I've got a directional border, like my whale tails are directional. What's going to happen, this is going to come down to the lower corner. This piece will go up to the upper corner, and your heart or your trees or whatever is directional, your whale tails will all go the right direction. Okay, so that's the basic technique. Remember, X is variable depending on how tall your border is. If you're laying it out horizontally on your table or on your cutting mat, you'll measure how tall your border is and then divide that number in 2, and that gets you your X number. Once you have the X number, then that is how far you go out from center to make your marks first on the bottom left, and then you'll do it on the top right and cut. So I'm going to work with my border now. If you want to, go ahead and use another scrap piece of paper, cut it to a different height. Try 2.5 inches, try 2 inches, try a different height, and just experiment one more time. I've already done this several times, so I'm pretty comfortable with the technique, but I don't want you cutting your borders until you're really comfortable. All right, I do have a 3-inch border. So what I'm going to do here is I've got my pencil line, or my pencil. I've got my 0 center ruler. I've got my middle, my 0 center ruler is on my middle, and I know once again my X number, because my height is 3 inches, my X number is 1.5. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come at the bottom. I'm going to line my border up again, get it nice and centered on here. I have my 0 center ruler, but you can use a regular ruler here. You would, if you're using the 13-inch cutting mat, you know where your 6-inch center is. You could actually bring this down lower and you could just use the cutting mat if you wanted to. All right, I could come down here. I'll use the cutting mat in this guide. I'm going to come down here. Here's my middle. Here's 6 inches. I'm going to measure over 1.5 inches. So here's 1 and then half, and I'll make a mark with my pencil. Now, if I need to, I can just come up to the top of my cutting mat, line it back up nice and even. There's my 6-inch middle up here at the top. I'm going to go over 1.5 inches. I know not everybody has a 0 center ruler, but you can toss it in your cart next time. They are handy, and it's like $6.50 or something on the Creative Memories website. So it's a nice little investment, especially right now when we have a promo going on and you're just trying to find things to add to your order. A 0 center ruler is pretty fantastic. So now I've got my pencil marks. You can't see them on here because it's gray, but I promise you they're there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut on the angle from pencil mark to pencil mark. So I'm going to bring it in here, line it up, find my pencil mark. My other pencil mark is there. I'm just taking my time to make sure I line it up good. Now I'm cutting through several pieces here. I've got a base layer, I've got a designer paper, I've got several layers of cardstock in here. I need to have a couple of passes using firm pressure on here to keep everything stable. There we go. There's my 2 pieces. They should be the same, roughly. Now what might happen here is you might find that you're going to have some loose pieces that start to pop up. So just have some adhesive handy. As you're cutting apart your border, you may find things fall off. Like this little whale tail, I'm not sure he's going to, oh, he is adhered on good, but that could have been a piece that would fall off. So you just kind of keep that in mind. Have some adhesive available and just keep track of any little pieces of your border that falls off, and then you can just put it all back together. So I've got my 2 sections, and this is what I talked about before, where I could totally come in something like this if I wanted to. Like that would be super cute. Just something basic like that, or spreading it across 2 pages. Quick way to use a single border on 2 pages. Now I need to go ahead and finish making these corner borders. So coming back again to where I talk about, we're now to step 4, flipping it over to the reverse side. I'm going to line it up, that top corner on the cut line, make sure I'm on that 45-degree angle, and I'm going to cut off the remaining squared corner. So just as a quick reminder, everybody, this works with any type of border. So any kind of decorative element, it's a great way to do it. It also is a nice way if you're wanting to make, if you do have directional paper, and you want to make sure when you cut things on a corner, you just have a strip left of maybe really pretty decorative paper, and you want to have 2 corner pieces, you can do this with just a plain strip of paper. It doesn't even have to be a border. So there's one piece, and here's my second piece. Flipping it over to the reverse side, and I'm going to cut off that corner. And there we go. So now I've got my 2 corner pieces. Apparently I didn't get to keep any of the green on the lower, on one of the pieces. I have 2 pieces of green, but no green down here. So that may be something I address, because if you see, remember I used green in the border, but because of the way things cut, there's no green down here. Not a big deal, but I might keep it in mind if I need to make any adjustments if I feel it's unbalanced. So I've got a corner that'll ultimately end up around there and around there. So there's our corner borders. We've got that all set to go, or we've cut our borders to fit into corners. Now, of course, it is not perfect, right? We do have a flat edge here. So when we're putting together our the page, I will talk to you about what you can do in this little section because it ultimately will have a little bit sticking out here, but that's really easy to fill in. You'd have to get that corner to be there, you would need to have a pretty wide, like a 6x6 border, or a 6-inch tall border. So it just starts to get kind of crazy. Okay, let's now grab our handout for the layout itself. They want you to use a sheet of designer paper, cardstock, whatever is your base. You pick your base color. And then they want you to cut a piece of paper to be 11 by 11. And that is, they use the striped paper in here and that's on here. Then they want you to adhere that to the page at an angle. I have a little note in here. I actually want us to work on this 11 by 11 inch square before we put it on our background. So that way, if we need to trim anything off, we can easily just slice it up with our trimmer and then make sure it's nice and clean before we put it on our background paper. But let's take a look at what I'm going to do with the pieces, the background. So I am using the the Pacific Northwest collection. I'm going to be using this tonal blue plaid. And I was going to use white on there, but as I was kind of playing around with it, I felt like it was kind of stark. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of beige. I am using cardstock rather than designer paper. In this particular case, the designer paper, because it's paired with the stickers, makes it a little harder if you just want extra paper. So I am going to use cardstock in lieu of designer paper here. I liked the plaid, the tonal background. That's why I'm using the designer paper there. So I need to take this piece of beige cardstock and I'm going to trim it down to 11 inches. So I'm going to cut off 1 inch from 2 sides, and that will be 11 inches. So I'll have an 11-inch square. Now this is the square that I talked about using before we adhere it to the page and then have to get our scissors out to cut pieces nice and square. I'm actually just going to work with it by itself. So I'm going to set my background piece to the side for the minute, and we're going to concentrate on this 11-inch square. We're going to get it all decorated up and ready to go, because at that point then it just goes on to your background piece. You could tilt it if you want, put it on straight, however you want it to go. So the original layout has stickers at the top and the bottom. So for here, what I did is I wanted to keep that element because I think it's nice. It's a good way to bring in some additional color and pattern. So what I'm going to do is I just cut some 1/2-inch strips out of some of the paper from the designer paper. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere this on the top and the bottom. And because my squared corners or the corner borders I've cut won't matter. It's fine. They're going to look just great in there, even with altering not a square anymore. It'll be a rectangle. And oh, there it is. Like, I forget what the paper actually looks like on the reverse side. So I'm going to use some adhesive on here. This is still cut. It's a 1/2 inch, but it's still cut to 12 inches. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. As I mentioned, I'll be able to cut it all up. I'll clean up all the edges before I put it on my paper or my background piece. So right now I'm just working to build anything that overhangs, not a big deal. Top and bottom, I will get that put on there. I'm using Repo adhesive. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of lifting because, as I mentioned, my border is gonna sit, or my cut borders are gonna kind of sit like up here, and I'll have another one that sits down here. So that's how they're gonna sit. I have a little bit of beige coming through here and up here. I wanna fill that in. So my options, I thought about, I had used, I think, charcoal cardstock as my base. I could have come in with some scraps of charcoal and just filled that all in. But when I did it, I really didn't like how it looked. So I wanted to bring in some of the designer paper. And I actually liked the plaid that was on the back side of this tonal green paper. It has you can see one side that green, the other side this plaid. So what I did is I cut a piece. This is about 1 1/8 inches wide. You have to just kind of measure it and see what's going to work best. I just cut a strip, figuring I could get the strip to work in there somehow. It's plenty big to fit there. And I cut some triangles. So what I'll do, I need to cut one more because I apparently I cut 2, but I lost 1. It's kind of like, one step forward, two steps back. Yeah, you cut two, lose one, misplace one. Feels that way on some things. I buy, two rulers, lose one. Buy two more, lose another one. So I have some triangle pieces. I'm going to go ahead and adhere those in place. I just want to cover up that corner. And then my border will overlap this. Now I'm going to go ahead and I could put on my border. There's additional border detail here. You can see they came in with some of the laser cut borders that were available with the carving memories. So they had these little pumpkins, and up here they did the bats. I punched a dotted diamond. We'll see how this looks. And I don't think I'm going to layer it under, because my thought was I could have it layered under and come out like such, right? And it goes all the way to the end. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and kind of leave it. It'll come out from the side, and I'm going to trim it so that it actually has a true diamond end. So I'll just use my scissors and clean that up so it has a squared off end. And then I'll figure out, I think it's going to go there. So I'm going to go ahead, and this one I will just cut with my scissors. Whatever border detail you want to use, you could use a laser cut border. A sticker would work really well here. I looked at the stickers for the Pacific Northwest, and none of them were really working for me. I went with navy as I went with navy as what I wanted to use because I've got navy in my whale tail, and that was how I chose the color. And then over on this other side, I'm not sure if I can get the same border to do. If I cut it, it's going to be a little bit short. Well, I think for the demonstration purposes, I'm going to cut it. I might need to go ahead and cut a second one if I want it to truly match, because this one's going to look a little short compared to this one unless I cut this one off. I'll make it even. There we go. So I like how that's coming together. I'm going to start adhering some pieces in place. I am focused on making sure that I'm straight along this edge. I see I'm a little bit catty over here, like it's kind of curving off the page a little bit, and that's okay because I can clean it up with my trimmer. So make sure the areas that you're not going to be able to use to cut off with your trimmer are nice and straight, and anything else that isn't, you can just cut with your trimmer. You're not going to notice that it's maybe not perfectly right angled on here. That's going to be fine. I thought about coming in with some trees, right? But the problem is up here, I would have a nice straight line with the trees all here, but then when they go upside down, it's kind of like it wasn't going to work. So I just went with a BMC that could go either direction and look just wonderful. The other thing I need to do, and I haven't done it yet, is I need to take a look at my border and figure out if I need to add any more adhesive. Well, this one's actually adhered pretty good. I don't think I'm going to need to add. The other one I cut, I had a lot of floppy areas that needed additional adhesive. Like this is a little bit loose down here. I could come in and add a little bit more adhesive under here just to make sure that that border is not going to go anywhere. So I've got everything in place. I think I'm going to have to. Everything is pretty much in place on my base paper now. I mean, aside are my decorative square, except for my photos. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my trimmer and I'm gonna clean this up so it's back down to that 11-inch width. So I'm just gonna come in here, clean it all up. A little bit of trimming to do on this other side, just a little bit. And I never adhered the other border at the top. So let me put that on. Make sure I put the adhesive on the right side of the border. So there's my kind of like my whole decorative thing here. I've got my whale tails, I've got the little border detail. So now it's time to put it on to my background piece. And there we can see how it pops on there. So I am probably going to gut the back of my paper a little bit. Um, I'm going to put this on at an angle because I need to measure how far in do I need to go, because I really can't just do like a 1-inch border, because when I tilt it, I need to make sure I have ample space to be able to attach my square to it, my 11-inch square. So I think probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a ruler. I think if I come in with a 1.5-inch frame, so I'll pop 9 inches, a 9-inch square out of the middle of my base paper, I should be good. So I'm going to grab my trimmer. We're going to do the frame cut. So hopefully you guys have done these frame cuts before. It's pretty quick and easy. If you want to, you can use your binder clips, because we will be making 4 repetitive cuts. I'm looking for my binder clip. What you'll be able to do is you just put your 2 binder clips in place, but I can only find, oh, I do have 2. So in case you're not familiar with the binder clip, let me walk you through this really quick. Those of you who've done this before, you could probably teach this part for me. So for the binder clip, what we're gonna do is we wanna cut basically from 1.5 inches in to, we wanna come over here to the 10.5 inches. So by putting binder clips in place, we're going to restrict what our trimmer can do. So I'm going to find the 1.5-inch mark on my trimmer. And there's a ruler here on the edge of the track. And so I'll bring the white spot over here to 1.5. And I'll stick a binder clip on the right edge of my housing, my blade housing. Now I'm going to move my thing over, my blade housing over to 10.5. And I will stick I'll stick a binder clip on the left side of my blade housing. Now I can only cut from 1.5 inches to 10.5. I'll put my paper in here. I'm going to bring it down so it comes to that 1.5-inch mark below the cut line. And then I cut from clip to clip. Don't put too much pressure side to side. You don't want to knock your clips out of the way. Rotate again, lining up at that 1.5-inch mark. I am making sure to keep my paper flush over here on the logo side, and I'll cut again. This helps you get comfortable with the technique of cutting that frame out without necessarily having to constantly worry, am I going to the right spot or not? 1.5. And my 9-inch square just drops right out. So then we'll come over here, put it back on my page. I am going to grab my 11-inch circle or square, and I'm going to put some adhesive on the outside edge. And then I can make the decision, do I want to put this on straight or do I want to angle it? And I'm not scared of angles, so I'm going to put it on at an angle. Looking just for kind of even. I want it to be even. That looks pretty good. Push it down, nice and firm in place. I'm gonna check my back for any adhesive that's exposed, and I don't have any. I kept my my adhesive to the outside edge of my square, so I'm good. Now it's time to think about photos and other accessories that you want to put in place, embellishments. Now they added some embellishment details up into the areas here. I don't necessarily need to, because remember I have a little bit more of a decorative feature in these corners. So I really don't want to add too much there. I went ahead and cut a couple of mats. They're sort of to their sizing. I did them in navy. I might actually reduce it down a little bit, or come in here and maybe I would change the color of some things, or I'll overlap them a little bit more. But it's going to be something to that effect. I don't know that I would necessarily want that to be covered up. So maybe for searching for ways to get it so that it wouldn't be. I don't know how that would be. I want more of my whale tails showing. So there, that might be good. And then up here, since I've got the navy mat with the navy, I might either choose a different color of mat. I just did navy because that's what I had available. So you kind of play around with it a little bit, see what you like. But you got some options there. Great spots for journaling if I wanted to do a small title here, or incorporate some stickers that maybe have that title built in. But that's kind of how this layout's headed. You can see we've got the borders worked into our corners. And that corner technique, the corner border, I could have just adhered these corner borders to the actual base page. So something to keep in mind, you don't necessarily have to use this layout. You can just use the strategy and work those corners in to however you want to do them. But if you've got some of those borders that you're trying to figure out what to do with, this is a great option, especially if you only have one. That's kind of one of the things that we do sometimes, is we create these borders, maybe as a part of a make and take. If you go to a crop and they're doing a demo and you have one border, you're like, well, what do I do with this now? This would be a strategy to use if you wanted to just do more than just put it on the page with pictures above or below. So that's an option there. So, all right, that's what we have for today. Not too bad. As I said, though, practice on scratch paper first, so that you feel confident with measuring those angles and cutting them, and that you know what you're getting before you go ahead and cut your border that you worked so hard to create, especially if you only have one of them and you don't necessarily have a way to recreate it if you need to. So, but if you do cut it wrong, it's not a big deal. You'll find ways to work it. Just don't get too mad. Just set it to the side, or figure out, there's different ways to do it. All right, so that is today's Scrapbook Live. So I will be back next week. I don't know with what project, but something. We're just, scooting our way right through July. And Power Hour is next week. That's very exciting. Tess and I will be on the 15th, so it's a week from yesterday in the evening. So look for Monday afternoon into the evening. We will have that email out to you with the handouts. And I think this weekend is Virtual Crop. That's very exciting. We'll have 4 sketches on the Creative Memories blog. And we are in the middle of the You Pick It promo for this summer. It came a little bit early, but it's very exciting. Some really fun products. So take a peek at the Creative Memories website. And if you are shopping on their website this week or next while the promo is happening, be sure to shop with an advisor. You're always welcome to shop with me, but please just make sure you're shopping and supporting an advisor. We love and really appreciate getting those emails letting us know that we have an order. It's always a delight to our day. And I thank every one of you who's ordered from me. That's fantastic. I really appreciate it. And just know that advisors, we just really, really appreciate it when we get those orders through the website. So I think that's all I've got. So we'll plan to see you all next week at Power Hour, and then again with Scrapbook Live on Wednesday next week. Take care, everyone. Stay cool out there, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.